Welcome to today's deep dive. We're ditching the spaceships and galaxies this time and landing somewhere a bit more, well, grounded. Valencia, Spain. I'll be honest, my knowledge of Valencia is basically paella and, oh yeah, they've got a football team.
Sounds like you're in for a treat then.
I think so, and I hope our listeners are too. I'm definitely ready to dig a little deeper than the touristy stuff. What about Valencia might surprise us?
Well, let's start with the name itself, Valencia.
Huh?
It hints at the city's long and layered history. We're talking way back, 138 BC, to the Roman Empire. They set up a colony called Valentia
Valentia-L, that's a mouthful. What's the story behind that?
The name actually tells us a lot. Valentia in Latin means strength or valor. It shows how important the city was militarily to the Romans. And then there's Editanorum. That refers to the Editani, an Iberian tribe who lived in the region before the Romans showed up.
So even from the very beginning, you see this mix of cultures, these layers of influence, and that seems to be a theme for Valencia. So after the Romans, what happened? Did that strength and valor hold up?
Not always in a literal way, but the spirit of it definitely did. When the Roman Empire fell, Valencia went through a lot of rulers and empires, just like most of Europe. First, it was part of the Visigothic kingdom. And then in the 8th century AD, the Moors came in, bringing Islamic influences that really changed the city.
Like what kind of changes?
Think innovative irrigation systems, new crops, that kind of thing. It really transformed the landscape.
So a big change from Roman military power to Moorish agriculture innovation. It sounds like each new chapter in Valencia's history brought something totally new and unique. Did all this mixing of civilizations ever lead to any big turning points?
Absolutely. A really big one was the Christian reconquest of Valencia in 1238. The city then became the capital of a brand new kingdom, the Kingdom of Valencia. It really ushered in a time of growth and prosperity.
A whole kingdom. Now you've got my attention. What was it like living in the Kingdom of Valencia?
Imagine a major powerhouse in the Mediterranean. The 15th century, called the Valentinian Golden Age, saw the city become super important both economically and culturally. Trade was booming, connecting Valencia with the rest of the Iberian Peninsula, Italy, and even further.
Wow.
This all led to an explosion in art and architecture. Some amazing works came out of this period, like the Serrano's Towers and the Silk Exchange. They became symbols of Valencia's wealth and sophistication.
Those towers sound impressive. What were they like?
The Serrano's Towers were originally part of the city's medieval walls, guarding the entrance. Picture yourself standing under those huge arches, knowing they once stood for Valencia's strength and independence.
It must have been something. What about the Silk Exchange? I'm imagining something pretty grand.
Oh, absolutely. The Silk Exchange was this huge, magnificent hall filled with light streaming in through these soaring windows. It was a place where merchants from all over the Mediterranean would meet to trade silk, spices, all kinds of precious stuff. It really shows just how powerful Valencia was in trade during its golden age.
So we've gone from a Roman colony to a flourishing kingdom. Valencia's history is full of twists and turns. But I imagine it wasn't all sunshine and roses. There had to be some tougher times too, right?
Yeah, sadly that's true. No golden age lasts forever. Valencia definitely went through its share of hardships, starting with the Black Death in the 14th century. That plague was devastating, wiping out huge numbers of people. And then in 1609, the expulsion of the Moriscos, who were descendants of Muslims who had converted to Christianity, dealt a huge blow to the city.
It sounds incredibly difficult to lose so many people to the plague and then to experience such a forced upheaval of society. It's hard to imagine how Valencia could come back from all that.
I think it speaks to the city's resilience. Valencia has this incredible ability to bounce back, to adapt, to reinvent itself. For example, in the 18th century, the silk industry became a major force again, bringing a new wave of prosperity.
So even after facing such hardship, Valencia found a way to thrive again. It does seem like that's a theme we keep seeing throughout its history. So as Valencia moved into the modern era, what happened then?
Well, the 19th and 20th centuries brought their own set of challenges. The Peninsular War, the rise of industrialization, and then Valencia even served as the temporary capital of Republican Spain during the Civil War.
The temporary capital of Spain. I had no idea. It really seems like Valencia has always been at the crossroads of history. But it didn't stay stuck in the past, did it? What makes Valencia special today, in the 21st century?
That's what we'll uncover in our next part. From ancient Roman roots to a city that embraces both tradition and innovation, Valencia's story is far from over.
So we left off talking about Valencia as a temporary capital during the Civil War. That must have been a really intense time for the city.
Oh, absolutely. The Spanish Civil War was a time of deep division, and Valencia was right in the thick of it. But even with all that turmoil, you could still sense the resilience, the determination to hold on to the city's unique identity.
And after the war, under Franco's regime, was Valencia able to maintain that identity?
It's tough to say for sure. The Franco regime tried to suppress a lot of regional cultures and languages, including the Valencian language, but Valencia's independent spirit never really went away. After Franco died and democracy was restored, there was this resurgence of Valencian culture. It was like the city was finally free to breathe again, to reclaim its heritage and celebrate its own unique place in the world.
Speaking of Valencia's unique place in the world, you mentioned that its name changed over time. It started as Valencia Editorum under the Romans, but what about during Moorish rule?
It's really cool how you can see each part of Valencia's history reflected in its name. During the Islamic rule, from the 8th to the 13th centuries, the city was known as Medina at Tarab, which in Arabic means city of joy.
City of Joy.
Yeah, some sources translate it as Medina at Tarab too, which means city of sands, referencing its location near the Turia River.
City of Joy, City of Sands. Such a different feeling from the Roman strength and valor. Seems like the city's personality changed with each new influence.
Exactly, and those changes are part of what make Valencia so fascinating. Even the spelling in the city's name shows its unique identity. In Valencian, the local language, it's officially spelled Valencia with an accent on the E.
So even in the name, we see this mix of history, language, and cultural identity. Of all the periods we've talked about, is there one that stands out to you as the most important in shaping modern-day Valencia?
It's hard to pick just one. But the Valencian Golden Age, that time of economic and cultural boom in the 15th century, definitely left a lasting impact on the city. We can still see its legacy today in Valencia's architecture, its art, even its food. It reminds us that Valencia was once a major power in Europe, a city with influence far beyond its borders.
We've talked about the Serranos Towers and the Silk Exchange as being great examples of architecture from that time. Are there any other places from the Golden Age that visitors should check out?
The whole historic center of Valencia is like a living museum, with narrow, winding streets that are full of history. You can find these hidden plazas with old fountains, parts of the old city walls, and beautiful Gothic churches. And of course, there's the Lancha de la Seda, the Silk Exchange, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Wow, it sounds amazing, like stepping back in time. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about some of the more difficult parts of Valencia's history, the Black Death and the expulsion of the Moriscos, for example. How did those events affect the city's future?
They were devastating setbacks, there's no doubt about that. The Black Death in the 14th century killed off a huge chunk of the population, and its impact lasted for generations. And the expulsion of the Moriscos in the 17th century, which was driven by religious intolerance and political games, had terrible economic consequences. The Moriscos were skilled in farming, crafts, and trade, and forcing them out left a gap that took a long time to fill.
So from a peak of prosperity to these periods of decline, Valencia certainly had a roller coaster of a journey. But it didn't stay down forever, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned that resilience seems to be a defining trait of the city.
Definitely. Valencia just has this remarkable ability to adapt, to reinvent itself, to rise from the ashes. After the silk industry declined, new industries sprung up. The city took on the challenges of industrialization head-on. And even with the civil war and political upheaval of the 20th century, Valencia always found a way to bounce back, to rebuild and reimagine itself.
And that brings us to modern-day Valencia. You've given us a really vivid picture of its past, but what about its present? What can visitors expect when they go to Valencia today?
Valencia today is a city of contrasts, where the ancient past blends seamlessly with modern innovation. You can walk through the historic center, admiring the Gothic cathedrals and Renaissance palaces. And then, just a short distance away, you'll find yourself in the futuristic city of arts and sciences. It's a complex of avant-garde buildings designed by Santiago Calatrava.
That mix of old and new is really appealing. It's like experiencing different periods of history all in one place.
Exactly. And it's not just about the architecture. Valencia has beautiful beaches along the Mediterranean, a fantastic food scene that goes way beyond paella, and this energy that you can feel pulsing through its streets. It's a city that embraces its traditions while constantly pushing boundaries and innovating. It creates a unique and unforgettable experience for everyone who visits.
You're making me want to book a flight to Valencia right now. Before we move on, I have to ask about one more thing.
No.
We briefly touched on the Fallas Festival, but I'm still curious about those incredibly detailed ninuts you mentioned. What can you tell us about them?
The Ninos are really the heart and soul of the Fallas Festival. They're these massive, elaborate figures made of wood, cardboard, and paper mache, often several stories high. Each year, hundreds of them are created by neighborhood groups, and they're displayed all over the city during the festival in March.
I've seen pictures, and they're often quite satirical, right? Sort of like giant caricatures making fun of politicians, celebrities, current events.
Yeah, exactly. They're super creative and often pretty funny. It's a reflection of the Valencian sense of humor and their way of commenting on society. Creating a ninot is a real labor of love, a true art form. Teams of skilled artisans spend months building these elaborate figures using traditional techniques that have been passed down through generations.
So it's a mix of artistry, satire, and community spirit, all in one giant, flammable package. And I'm guessing flammable is the key word here.
You got it. The fate of the Ninots is tied to the grand finale of the Fallas Festival. It's called La Crema. On the last night of the festival, all of these amazing Ninots are set on fire in a spectacular ceremony. It fills the city with smoke and fire, and there's this undeniable sense of catharsis. It's symbolic of cleansing and renewal, saying goodbye to the old and welcoming the new.
From ancient Roman soldiers to a city consumed by fire, Valencia's story is definitely anything but boring. But before we wrap up our deep dive, I'm curious to hear more about what you personally find so compelling about Valencia. What draws you to this city, and what would you recommend to someone experiencing it for the first time?
It's the energy for me, the vibrancy that's just everywhere in Valencia. The city has a pulse, a rhythm that's both ancient and modern, you know. You feel it in the bustling markets, the laughter in the plazas, even in those passionate conversations spilling out of cafes late into the night.
It does sound like a city that embraces life to the fullest. A place where history whispers to you, but innovation is sparking your imagination at the same time.
You hit the nail on the head, and that's what I'd recommend to anyone visiting for the first time. Embrace those contrasts. Walk through that historic center, take in the Gothic architecture of the cathedral, and then head over to the futuristic City of Arts and Sciences. Get lost in the maze of streets in Barrio del Carmen, then soak up some sun on the beaches of La Malvarosa.
And of course, we can't forget the food. I'm ready to move beyond paella and delve into fideuà and arroz so banda. What other culinary adventures await?
Oh, the tapas. Valencia is full of tapas bars, each with its own unique take on those little bites of deliciousness. And for a sweet treat, you gotta try horchata with fartins. Those long, sweet pastries, they're perfect for dipping.
My travel list is getting longer by the minute. But what about the people? Beyond the food and architecture, what sets the people of Valencia apart?
Valencians are incredibly warm and welcoming. They have this contagious zest for life, a passion that comes through in everything they do. They're proud of their city, their traditions, and they love to share them with visitors. Don't be surprised if you find yourself chatting with locals, joining in celebrations, being treated like a long-lost friend.
I'm really starting to understand why you're so drawn to this city. It's more than just sights and sounds. It's an experience, a feeling that sticks with you.
That's the magic of Valencia. It gets under your skin, awakens your senses, leaves you wanting more. It's where history, culture, and innovation come together, creating this energy that's both exhilarating and inspiring.
Well, you've sold me. Valencia's at the top of my list now. I want to wander its streets, taste its flavors, and experience that vibrant energy for myself. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
I learned so much about a city that, honestly, I knew very little about before.
It was my pleasure. I hope you get to experience the magic of Valencia yourself sometime soon. And when you do, keep your senses open, your curiosity alive, and be ready to be amazed.
And to all our listeners, if you're searching for a destination that's a little off the beaten path, but offers a rich blend of history, culture, and modern charm, Valencia should be right up there on your list. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.